Today we're looking at Magic cards that are just awful. Not mediocre ones, not niche tech with hidden upside, just baffling, miserable designs that make you question how they ever made it past R&D. Here are 20 of the worst ever printed. And no, I'm not including Squire or Stormcrow. They've suffered enough. Number 20. Fasting. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a hunger counter on this enchantment. Then destroy this enchantment if it has 5 or more hunger counters on it. If you would begin your draw step, you may skip that step instead. If you do, you gain 2 life. When you draw a card, destroy this enchantment. Basically, fasting lets you trade drawing cards for gaining life, at the abysmal rate of 2 life per card. In no universe is this worth it. Number 19. Rackolyte. Rackolyte is a 6 mana artifact that says pay 2, prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn. Return this artifact to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. That means you're making a total investment of 8 mana to prevent your first 1 damage with this. That would already be terrible, but then Rackolyte is inexplicably returned to your hand after activating it, meaning you have to pay 6 and cast it again. This entire design just makes no sense at all. Number 18. Selfless Exorcist. Costing 3 and 2 white, Selfless Exorcist is a 3/4 creature with the activated ability tap, exile target creature card from a graveyard. That creature deals damage equal to its power to this creature. Paying 5 mana for a creature that can exile only 1 card per activation, and only creature cards at that, is unacceptably weak. Then, to add insult to injury, the exiled creature then deals damage to Selfless Exorcist, meaning you have to realistically limit yourself to exiling creatures with power 3 or less. Utterly ridiculous. Number 17. Withering Hex. A 1 mana black aura. Whenever a player cycles a card, put a plague counter on this aura. Enchanted creature gets -1/-1 for each plague counter on this aura. Cycling was a big mechanic in Onslaught block, but even then, the fact that you have to cycle multiple cards to kill a creature with toughness greater than 1 makes Withering Hex unplayably slow as far as removal goes, even in draft. Number 16. Chimney Imp. Chimney Imp is sometimes described as the absolute worst creature in Magic. That's probably a bit of a stretch, but this monstrosity is certainly not constructed viable. It's a 5 mana 1/2 flyer. Sure, when it dies, target opponent puts a card from their hand on top of their library, but that's a minor payoff for such a hefty cost on such a small body. Number 15. Juju Bubble. Cumulative upkeep 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, put an age counter on this permanent, then sacrifice it unless you pay its upkeep cost for each age counter on it. Another effect that offers life gain at a lousy rate, among many other problems. Juju Bubble lets you pay 2 generic mana to gain 1 life, but the cumulative upkeep is a huge drawback. These kinds of costs snowball fast. Worse still, Juju Bubble says, when you play a card, sacrifice this artifact. So if you cast a spell or even play a land, the bubble is gone. In other words, this card is painfully bad. A truly stupid design. Number 14. Razor Boomerang. Equipped creature has tap, unattach Razor Boomerang. It deals 1 damage to any target. Return Razor Boomerang to its owner's hand. Mana cost 3, equip cost 2. Again, we have a weak effect made ridiculously awful by requiring you to return the whole artifact to your hand after activating it. For this reason, Razor Boomerang quickly became a poster child for terrible Magic cards. As far as equipment go, it's the anti-Skull Clamp. Number 13. Tarns Glare. 1 mana red sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of target opponent's library, then put them back in any order. That player looks at the top 3 cards of your library, then puts them back in any order. Simply rearranging the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck is already an underwhelming effect, but letting the opponent do the same back to you makes Tarns Glare actively self-sabotaging. Number 12. Security Detail. Security Detail is a 4-mana white enchantment. Its activated ability is pay 2 white, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Activate only if you control no creatures, and only once each turn. Wait, what? Your initial investment in this card is 6 mana to get a single 1/1 token. And even then, you can't make more tokens if you already control a token or any other creatures. How was this a rare? Number 11. Rristic Cave. There were several Rristic cards, ranging from weak to very strong. The absolute worst of them is the land Rristic Cave. It has tap, choose a color, add 1 mana of that color unless any player pays 1. So this is a rainbow land whose mana producing ability can be force spiked by any of your opponents. In a word, unplayable. Nice art though. Number 10. Mudhole. This 3 mana instant exiles all land cards from a graveyard. Not all cards from the graveyard, just the lands. That's a ridiculously narrow effect, only hitting a small number of decks. Think of how overcosted this effect is too. Tormod's Crypt costs 0 mana. Number 9. Common Cause. Common Cause is another one of those bad cards that almost feels like it was the result of a typo or a wording mistake. This 3 mana enchantment says, non-artifact creatures get +2/+2 as long as they all share a color. At first glance that seems okay, but when you think about it for a second, it reveals its atrociousness. First of all, it applies to both your creatures and your opponent's creatures. Secondly, it only applies the buff if all creatures on the battlefield share a color. If even one creature isn't the same color as all the others, the effect won't be active. Number 8. Dungeon Descent. Dungeon Descent is a bit of a head-scratcher. Venturing into the dungeon was a very new mechanic, so it's understandable that the card designers might have been unsure of how to balance it. The initiative, for example, turned out to be notoriously busted. But even then, this card is so weak that it's hard to see how it made it through playtesting without someone speaking up. It's a colorless land that enters tapped. It also has pay 4, tap an untapped legendary creature you control, venture into the dungeon. Activate only as a sorcery. This ability is fairly weak and requires a hefty investment. On Magic Arena, an improved version of Dungeon Descent was released for Alchemy, which made it enter untapped and reduced the activation cost from 4 to 1. But even this stronger take on the card was not constructed viable. Number 7. Pale Moon. 1 and a blue for an instant that says, until end of turn, if a player taps a non-basic land for mana, it produces colorless mana instead of any other type. So for 2 mana, you can mess with your opponent's color fixing for 1 turn. You don't even cut off their mana production altogether, you just make it colorless. Sure, this effect will be annoying for your opponent, but it's nowhere near strong enough to justify 2 mana and a full card. Number 6. Hint of Insanity. For 3 mana, this sorcery says, target player reveals their hand. That player discards all non-land cards with the same name as another card in their hand. Okay, so they only discard cards if they're holding multiple copies of something. Players are generally most likely to be holding several copies of basic lands, but of course Hint of Insanity only applies to non-land cards. Perhaps the card name refers to the card designer's state of mind. Number 5. Zepha Spirit. Zepha Spirit is another famously bad one. It's 6 mana for a 0/6 that says, when this creature blocks, return it to its owner's hand. It has hefty toughness for a blue creature, but no power, and can only block once before bouncing back to your hand and needing to be recast. The mana investment required for this exceptionally weak creature is unjustifiable, even in limited. Number 4. Alabaster Leech. Now we get to the truly iconic bad magic cards. Alabaster Leech was part of a cycle of overstatted creatures that made all your spells of the same color cost 1 more, but the Leech is far and away the worst of them. For 1 mana, you get a 1/3 with no combat abilities that says white spells you cast cost 1 white more to cast. So you get a weenie with decent toughness, but at the cost of hobbling your entire game plan. For comparison, the creature Staunch Shieldmate was printed in M21. It's Alabaster Leech without the downside, and it's a common. And it's also unplayable outside of limited. Number 3. Wood Elemental. For 4 mana, Wood Elemental is a creature with, as this creature enters, sacrifice any number of untapped forests. Wood Elemental's power and toughness are each equal to the number of forests sacrificed as it entered. If this just let you sacrifice any lands, it would be vaguely interesting, but still bad. For comparison, we already have a card that does that called Devastating Summons, except it costs 1 mana and creates 2 creatures with power and toughness equal to the number of lands you sacrificed. But what makes Wood Elemental truly abysmal is the fact that you have to sacrifice untapped lands to do it. So if you wanted this to be a 4/4 for 4, you'd probably have to ramp up to 8 lands, tap 4 of them, sacrifice the other 4 untapped ones, thus effectively costing you 8 mana immediately, and in effect a further 4 mana every turn thereafter, since you no longer have access to the lands you sacrificed. Mind-boggling. Number 2. Sorrow's Path. Sorrow's Path is another card so terrible it almost seems like it was the result of a mistranslation or some kind of miscommunication. It's a land that can't produce mana. Instead, it has tap, choose 2 target blocking creatures controlled by the same opponent. If each of those creatures could block all creatures that the other is blocking, remove both of them from combat. Each one then blocks all creatures the other was blocking. Whenever this land becomes tapped, it deals 2 damage to you and each creature you control. It's a bit of a headache to understand, but basically you can tap it to switch around 2 of your opponent's blockers, which is pretty lame. To make matters worse, Sorrow's Path then deals 2 damage to you and pyroclasms all of your creatures. That's an insane drawback. All I know is this card feels cursed, and I don't like looking at it. Number 1. Break Open. Finally, we have Break Open, a 2 mana red sorcery reading, turn target face down creature an opponent controls face up. This card was from Onslaught block, where Morph was a major theme. The problem with it is that it can only turn your opponent's Morph creatures face up. Morph creatures or disguise creatures are almost always stronger in their face up form. Some of them even have abilities that trigger when they're turned face up. So why would you ever want to make your opponent's creatures stronger or provide them with value through their triggers? Realistically speaking, there's basically no scenario where Break Open would ever advance your game plan, making it truly one of the worst Magic cards in history. Until next time, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon. All patrons will have their names included in the credits for these videos.